Hi, Janet. We're just gonna get started here in just a minute. Okay.
Okay.
Stop our video.
Do you want me to go ahead and put mine up there then?
Oops. Start video.
Okay. Big one. There we go.
Yes, I don't care if it's on me the whole time. Oh, joy of technology. All right, and then let me just get this going here.
I probably need to.
Okay.
I am. It's going to have me right here. Oh, okay. So.
All right, so we're starting. Let me. Okay, Janet, can we hear you?
I hope so. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay, Leslie?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. I'm just checking.
All right, so go ahead, Janet, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name's Janet Strong, and I am a clinical education specialist for STERIS. And I am going to be presenting tonight on Introduction to Low Temperature Sterilization. And this is good for one continuing education unit, and it's accredited through the American Board of Certification for Gastroenterology, also for the Board of Ambulatory Surgery Centers, and then it is good for AMI credentials if you're certified there, California Board of Registered Nursing, Certified Board for Sterile Processing and Distribution, and ISHM, International Association for Healthcare Central Service Material Management. I am not here to promote STERIS products. I am here to give you education, and through that, you'll not see any kind of commercial support or any kind of product mentioned on here. Our CEs are based basically on AMI, AORN, and ISHM guidelines and standards. These are the three objectives we're going to talk about today. The first one is articulate the history and types of low temperature sterilization and processes. Identify important considerations when selecting a low temperature sterilization process. And finally, we're going to talk about prepare for implementation of low temperature sterilization process. So what is the purpose of sterilization? The reason that we want to sterilize things is because we have reusable medical devices, and we basically want to destroy all the viable microorganisms, in particular bacteria, fungi, viruses, spores on these devices. So what's the goal of sterilization? Obviously, the goal of sterilization is to make sure that any patient, whether they're just going to undergo a diagnostic test or whether they're actually going to have an invasive procedure, they don't expect to develop any kind of infection when they come into our facility. So sterilization's goal is to prevent any infection to any of the patients that come into our facilities. So this is just a little bit about statistics. You can see that according to the CDC, 2 million people are admitted per year to the hospital, and they will develop a hospital associated infection. That's quite a large amount, and based on the statistics, about 1/5 of those will also die as a result of that infection, and the costs are staggering, what it's costing healthcare organizations and patients. But again, the loss of life is pretty sobering. So one way to help prevent the hospital-acquired infections is to make sure that we're doing thorough, proper cleaning and sterilization of the semi-critical and the critical devices. So when you look at this picture, you see many different types of materials in here. These are just a small selection of items that we sterilize in our facilities. But you can see rubbers, you can see plastics, you can see metals, anodized aluminum, and then we also have to consider what kind of adhesive or sterilants are they using to secure the pieces that have to be assembled to make sure that these components protect the devices and things that are in there. So if we use the wrong kind of sterilization, you can see that we can either get thermal damage from the heat or we can get chemical damage from the sterilant. Each kind of packaging or each instrument does have an IFU to it, and we really should look at the manufacturer's IFU to see what it says to sterilize it with. Now, some of them may come with a dual way of doing it. You may see it for that you can sterilize it or you can put it into a chemical sterilization process. So you're going to want to do what is best. But again, you want to make sure that you follow the IFU for that to make sure you're getting the correct way. So we talked a little bit about methods of sterilization. There are two methods of sterilization. One is going to be thermal and one is going to be chemical. When we talk about thermal, we're talking about steam sterilization. It is the most popular that you're going to see in most facilities. However, dry heat is common in some healthcare segments. And then the second one is going to be the chemical, where we have the aldehydes, the peracetic acids, the ethylene oxide, vaporized hydrogen peroxide with and without gas plasma, and ozone are just some of the typical ones that we see in the facilities. So low temperature chemical sterilization processes are the typical low temperature sterilization things that we're going to see. This is usually held at around 60 degrees centigrade or 152 Fahrenheit. Low temperature sterilization is designed for heat sensitive medical devices that you're going to normally see in minimally invasive procedures, and includes cameras, flexible endoscopes, and rigid endoscopes, to name a few. The other things that we want to look at too is things that may be sensitive to have a lot of moisture in them. So things that you can't submerge or that have a lot of moisture. So it's usually heat and moisture sensitive for these. So when we look at a historical overview of the low temperature sterilization in healthcare, we can see that it began in the 1950s when ethylene oxide was used for food production for many years prior to that. And they like to sterilize spices. When it was exposed to high temperatures, it would change the taste. We started looking at medical devices that were available to hospitals in the 50s. In the 1960s, we started having concerns about the toxicity of the EO, and we started looking at alternatives. And one of the alternatives they found was glutaraldehyde. It had been used as a high-level disinfectant for many years. However, the extended soaking time, that's what accomplished the sterilization. And so some of the people started looking at that too. This addressed the EO, but it didn't do anything for long-term sterilization. If you wanted to leave it on the shelf for a period of time, obviously glutaraldehyde was just in time, and it had to be rinsed with sterile water for that. And then again, we have to think about what kind of devices are we using that could not be submerged into any kind of liquids. So then in 2003, we started noticing more growing concerns for glutaraldehyde, and OPA became the safe aldehyde that we could use like that. However, again, we see long processing times for the long soak times for that also. And again, we don't have any shelf life. In 1988, they started using peracetic acid for liquid chemical sterilization. This system didn't have the long soak times because you could usually run a cycle in about 25 minutes, but it also didn't have the extended time that we could store it on the shelf. It was both basically for just-in-time cases. In 1983, we see the real first alternative to ethylene oxide become available. The system employed hydrogen peroxide gas plasma to sterilize. It was rapid in the time that it took to process it, and it gave them long-term sterilization. But it was limited to the kind of compatibility it had with materials and instrument length lumens. In 2007, we see that the first vaporized hydrogen peroxide sterilizer was available, and we knew that you could use it in industry applications. And so they started looking at it, and it also expanded the load weight, the length of the lumen, and the type of items that could be processed in there. 2009, we start hearing about ozone became available for healthcare. Ozone was recognized for its sterilization power of water systems. and the aggressive nature of the ozone limited material compatibility. In 2014, it was combined with hydrogen peroxide to create a new sterilization process. Limited field data available regarding the compatibility of the combined hydrogen peroxide and ozone process was, we didn't have a lot of information. And so that became an issue with that. But with each one of these methods, we see pros and we see cons. And so we have to use what is going to be best for our facility. The cleaning sterilization process is complex for these systems. Items must be thoroughly cleaned during the decontamination process, as you guys have heard many times. If we don't clean it, we can't sterilize it. So we need to make sure that it's clean and any residual chemistry is removed, because that may interfere with the sterilization process too. Once the items have been cleaned, they must be properly prepared. So again, with hydrogen peroxide especially, we know that the items cannot have any moisture in them. So we want to make sure that the items are being dried properly. You want to make sure too that we know that we can't use towels or cellulose in there. So we have to make sure that we are not using any kind of that packaging, and that the packaging needs to be validated for vaporized hydrogen peroxide. The other thing that we want to look at is that the sterilizer has to be properly maintained. Your equipment has to have its quality checks done on it. You want to make sure that you're checking the parameters on your machine to make sure that it's passing. Your connectors are correctly on there, and that are loading the correct way that it is loaded in the machine will make a big difference. So when we talk about quality control, obviously we're going to look at cleaning indicators. One of the things that we talk about or Amy talks about, is verification of clean process. And we can achieve that when we look at putting things through the washer, because we do the daily checks on those for cleaning verification. But most of these items are being washed manually. And are we checking them on the clean side for any kind of cleaning verification, any kind of residual protein or anything on there? So that's something that we need to look at, because that is one of the AMI indicators. The second thing we want to do is product testing. And I'm not sure how many of your facilities actually do any product testing, but again, product testing, you want to put biologicals in the inside of your wrapped items and go ahead and sterilize those, take them out and open up the biologicals, incubate them. Basically what we're doing is we're making sure that the steam sterilization is reaching inside of all of those areas. So that's what we want to do when we make sure we're doing product testing. And of course, make sure that your devices are being inspected. As we mentioned earlier, you have glues and different ways of putting the pieces together, and some of these may be damaging to that. So it's good to have everything inspected to make sure that everything is still tightly sealed up. And then lastly, when we talk about quality control with our sterilizers, we want to make sure that our biological and our chemical indicators are ran appropriately. And we want to make sure that we are using our cycle printouts on them and attaching everything together, or having it recorded in your computer. So when we talk about these different modes of chemical sterilization, let's talk a little bit about aldehyde first. Aldehydes cover a range of chemicals that can be used in both high-level disinfection, which is the more common way that we see it, and also in sterilization. They all kind of share the same modes. OPA and glutaraldehyde are the most common that we see. You could also see formaldehyde, but that we don't see that in sterilization. It's more for a preservative for our specimens. To be effective, they must be maintained at the right temperature and the right concentration. If you don't have the right hang on here. I don't know what happened, but there we are. If they're not at the right temperature or the right concentration, it is not gonna be as effective. And then also it has to be, the time has got to be in there. So we've got 3 parameters, temperature, concentration, and time. So what are the pros and cons? The pros on these, we know that they can be used on a broad base of submergible devices, so it has a broad range. The OPA does have a little bit lower profile, odor profile, and compared to the glutaraldehyde. And also we know that it's at the point of use, it provides a good way for satellite reprocessing areas to use these, which would be like your ER or maybe your clinics would be someplace like that. The cons are going to be that you're going to have, if you want sterilization, usually you have to soak it for a very long time, and we usually don't see that. Also, you're going to do this for just in time, so there is no storage. Devices must be completely immersed. I remember using glutaraldehyde when I first started in the OR. That's what we soaked our arthroscopies, cameras and things in, and you know, you always had to keep the connector part out, and you had to be careful so you didn't get it on your field and contaminate your field. Some patients do have sensitivity, and staff have sensitivity to aldehydes. I know that some people that have colonoscopies can get a sensitivity to the aldehydes when they have that. There is no personal monitoring with this. You know, with EO, you had to wear the badges. There isn't any kind of personal monitoring with this. And you have to neutralize these when you're getting ready to dispose of them so they're safe for the environment. So parasitic acid liquid chemical sterilization is a very aggressive acid, and when combined with a buffer system, it can quickly kill microorganisms but maintain a neutral pH, giving it a high material compatibility rating. So that's one of the things that we want to be mindful of that. It denatures the protein, disrupts the cell wall permeability, and oxidizes sulfur bonds into protein and enzymes. So it basically shuts down the system that way. Like any other kind of chemical sterilization process that we talk about, you're looking at your 3 parameters of temperature, the concentration of the parasitic acid, and the time. Also, anytime that you are handling any of these, because they are chemicals, we do want to make sure that we are wearing gloves so that we don't achieve any kind of chemical burns or anything. Sometimes when we're doing the parasitic acid, you know, we're always taught to kind of check the container. Well, if there's something left in there and you give it a little shake, then you could get some of that on your skin, and you could get or if it's not empty all the way, you could get a burn from that. So be mindful of that. Pros and cons, I just went over one of the cons, but the pros obviously is the cycle time, 30 minutes or less, and you can use a broad range of devices because the material compatibility is so good. There is no environmental monitoring when you want to dispose of this. And again, it's good for point of use areas. So again, if you have a clinic or someplace like that where you want some quick sterilization, you can use them in those areas. The cons, again, it is unwrapped. There's no storage system on there, so it's for just-in-time use. You have to use devices that can be immersed. We want to make sure that, you know, it's going to be in liquid, so you're going to have to be able to immerse all the devices. And then if you're looking at endoscopes and stuff, not all the quick connects are available for everything with channels in them. So EO, just quickly, how many of you guys still are using EO? Quite a few people, or just a couple, or? So we don't see it a lot anymore. I know, just for a quick method of comment, Steris is not supporting the ones that we sold years ago because they're becoming obsolete, and we really aren't installing any new ones. So ethylene oxide was the first low temperature gas to be introduced into the healthcare system. It's a chemical process known as alkylation. The ETO penetrates the microbial cells and reacts primarily with the protein, DNA, and RNA. And then it makes the cell so it can't metabolize and reproduce. The parameters for this include temperature, time, and concentration, but this one also, you have to have humidity in there with it too. So pros and cons again. This one is relatively low cost per cycle. You do have the sterile storage compatibility, so we have long-term storage on that. The penetration is superior to get it into the areas that for sterilization. It has a very good material compatibility, and then there is no lumen restrictions. It's non-corrosive, and the machine is fairly easy to use. It does have disadvantages, however. It's a highly effective sterilant. Times can be lengthy, 1 to 4 hours of exposure, but the real problem with this becomes the amount of time that it takes to aerate the instruments after they're exposed. And sometimes aeration can take up to 8 hours or longer. It is it's hazardous, toxicity, flammability in here. So we have to be careful with that. Years ago, when you had the bigger tanks of it and stuff, it was more dangerous than now. It's pretty much you didn't have to blend it anymore, so it's a little bit easier now to use. The other thing too is you have to have personal monitoring. It has to be vented directly into the atmosphere. You cannot like move it around. It has to go straight up into it's got to be vented straight out of the facility. And we have different kinds of record keeping to do with that. And a lot of these are OSHA requirements. And so they're the ones that tell us that they have to be monitored. So hydrogen peroxide, it's been used for a long time as a gas sterilant within pharmaceutical and food industries, but healthcare has only been seeing it for the past 25 years. There are 3 systems that employ hydrogen peroxide as a primary sterilant today. One system also employs a second sterilant with the hydrogen peroxide. So let's look at these in a little bit more detail. So we see the vaporized hydrogen or simplified hydrogen peroxide cycle profiles. Each sterilization process may have a multiple amount of cycle types that we can use, but the main premises of the cycle is the same for any given process. So following the conditioning cycle, systems employing only vaporized hydrogen peroxide utilize a series of below atmospheric pulses to penetrate packs with vaporized hydrogen peroxide and sterilize the items. After the sterilization, the chamber undergoes aeration, and it's during this time that the chamber air is removed and sent through a catalytic converter that changes any residual hydrogen peroxide and breaks it down into gas or water and oxygen. So 2 very I can't think of the word now I want to use. It's not ecology, very, very green. So then the next thing that we look at is the systems that apply hydrogen peroxide with gas plasma. So again, they're going to go through the conditioning, which air and moisture is removed from the chamber. Sterilization is performed through a series of pulses with the vaporized hydrogen peroxide and the gas plasma within the chamber. And at the end, the hydrogen peroxide is removed again from the chamber, and we have the catalytic converter, and the plasma is generated. Then lastly, we have vaporized hydrogen peroxide with the ozone. This system utilizes vaporized hydrogen peroxide and ozone, and they start this in the conditioning phase. And during this phase, the air and moisture is removed again from the chamber. Sterilization is accomplished through a series of pulses using hydrogen peroxide followed by an injection of ozone. The ozone is generated by the system using supplied oxygen. And then again, everything is removed through the aeration through the catalytic converter, and they have a series of air washes that go through there. Even though each sterilizer uses vaporized hydrogen peroxide, the addition of gas plasma and ozone changes the sterilization profile. Keep in mind that items validated for one process may not be suitable for the other, because that does change it a little bit. So when we look at hydrogen peroxide with and without gas plasma, excuse me, they both kill the microorganisms through oxidation. Oxidation breaks apart the bonds within the proteins and the enzymes in the cell walls. The critical parameters are similar to the other sterilizations. We're going to look at time, temperature, the concentration of the hydrogen peroxide, and we want to look at the pressure on here too. Hydrogen peroxide healthcare sterilizers submit a subatmospheric conditions, and so they have a vacuum point. The set of the vacuum point is different between the different sterilizers and even between the different sterilizer cycles. So the pulsing features and the vacuum provides the penetration power to reach into lumen devices and diffuse restricted spaces in there. So what are our pros and cons? Our pros are going to be, we have rapid sterilization times, most often under 1 hour. There also is no environmental concerns because, again, we have breaking it down into water and oxygen, and the units only require electricity, so they're easy to go into different areas because you just have to have the electrical component for that. You don't have to have any kind of water or any other piping in there, no special ventilation. And as time goes on, we are finding out that more and more material compatibility is available. And plus we have the sterile storage. So we have the long-term storage of it. What are some cons of this one? Obviously, some of the machines are very sensitive to moisture. So we have to make sure that everything is completely dry. And we want to make sure that we are using the correct kind of packaging materials for hydrogen peroxide. And we want to make sure that we don't have any towels or any kind of paper in there. Material compatibility, as I said earlier, some things are not compatible, but we're finding out as we test more and more things that things are becoming more compatible. It's a lot better today than it was 5 or 6 years ago. So we're seeing more things that can go in there. And then the loading constrictions. True plasma units have no radio frequency coils in the chamber, and vaporized hydrogen peroxide is transformed into plasma through an electrical current through the coil. And so we want to make sure that you don't damage any kind of coils in those units. And then lastly, but not least, there are some lumen restrictions on these. So we have to remember how long our lumens are and what size they are in diameter too. So when we talk about hydrogen peroxide with ozone sterilization, again, this is the last type that we'll talk about. And because it combines a second sterilization or sterilant in ozone. The peroxide provides the oxidation process for the sterilization. When combined with the ozone, free radicals are created and attack DNA, RNA, and other critical macromolecules within the cycle. Basically, it's going to end up killing it because it can't function in the way that it's used to doing. Just like vaporized hydrogen peroxide systems, again, we're going to look at time, temperature, and then the sterilant concentration in the ozone. On this one, the concentration of the ozone also plays a critical factor to the sterilization. Like other hydrogen peroxide systems, the vacuum and the pulsing feature provides penetration power to reach inside the lumens. So what are our pros and cons? Well, again, the systems both employ hydrogen peroxide and ozone as sterilizing agents. They are going to see some of the same benefits for hydrogen peroxide. Though ozone has the greatest microbicidal activity, it reacts with the hydrogen peroxide, reducing the concentration in the chamber. And again, easy to install. Electricity and oxygen must be supplied to the sterilizer. There is no special ventilation, or there isn't anything that we need to do to get rid of any kind of disposal of the byproducts, because again, you know, it's breaking it down into hydrogen and water. So the sensitivity, the cons obviously are going to be very similar too. The items must be dry, and the ozone is aggressive, and like hydrogen peroxide is reactive with the variety of materials, and sometimes it's more aggressive than the hydrogen peroxide. So we have to again look at what kind of loading considerations we have and the lumen restrictions with this also. And then that we have an external oxygen source for it too. So when we talk about ethylene oxide, as I mentioned before, we are finding out that because of the regulated and restricted concerns that staff have and the environmental environment has grown, most healthcare facilities have migrated away from using ethylene oxide. So some concerns that we have with the hospital and the environment. The EPA has restricted the load sizes on here. You're supposed to only process full loads in your sterilizers. And the rule does allow for less than a full load to be processed in emergency situations. We also have long cycle times. You've got that long aeration time in there that goes with it. And we have to make sure that people are being monitored. So we have the cost of that. Plus we have the disposal venting systems. As I mentioned, they have to be vented straight up through to the air. We cannot let them be vented in any other manner. And then if you do get this mixed with water, we end up with basically antifreeze. So we want to make sure that we don't do that. If you mix it with water, it's called ethylene glycol, and it can be toxic to your mucosal irritation, liver damage, and sometimes even death. So we really want to be careful with this when we use it. Environmental perspective, the most common problem is the ETO gas blends containing the hydrocarbon fluorocarbons, which can deplete the ozone. in our atmosphere. And so that's why we see that we've gotten rid of more and more of it. So when we look away from the low temperature process that you guys have used for many years, it might be scary. But there's 3 pillars that we want to consider. When you look at these 3 pillars, you want to pay attention to what's going to help you achieve the perfect sterilization process for your facility. It must fit the facility's needs. So is it going to be able to sterilize the kind of equipment you need it to sterilize? Is it going to be easy for you guys to use? What are your space considerations? So those are some things that we want to look at there. It must be safe, and safety measures should be easily obtainable. So again, we're not doing any monitoring on that. We want to look at that. And then the cost must not break your budget in the future or even now. You see, we have 3 pillars, and we don't have a pillar for the sterilizer being effective. And the sterilizer has to clear the FDA in the United States. So at this time, you can assume that it's going to be effective and it's going to be do what it's supposed to do. But if you look for more information, the CDC has a document, guideline for disinfection and sterilization in healthcare facilities. So you can look at that, and that will give you more information if you are wanting some. First thing that you want to do to get started with this is you want to look at all of your inventory that you have that needs to be processed in low temperature sterilization, and look at the manufacturer's recommendations. The manufacturer's recommendations change sometimes because there's new sterilization modalities and cycles come available. And so you want to check to make sure that you have the most current recommendations for that. And also it's necessary to sometimes get a list of what kind of materials they are being made out of, because sometimes that can help also. And then then you can start looking at how to review this. So you want to be able to use, you can use it for immediate use or sterile storage. And a lot of times people are like, immediate use, how can we do it for immediate use? Well, some of the new sterilizers have what they call a fast cycle on them. And you can go ahead and put items in there and do it. There's limitations to it. It can only weigh so much. It might not be able to have a lumen in that. But when you stop and think about that, you have it available and it's wrapped. And if you don't use it during the procedure, you can go ahead and put it back on the shelf. So these are some things that we want to look at. You want to look at also the low temperature sterilization, whether it can be liquid, gas, or both. Sometimes you want to identify what items can be immersed versus which ones can't. You want to review the sterilization requirements of the item. Instruments can be considered for retirement and replacement if you don't have an IFU for them, or maybe you have to steam sterilize them. And if you get the new version, you may be able to go ahead and put it in a vaporized hydrogen system, or if it was made for like ETO, you could go ahead and put it in this one too. And then the last thing that you want to think about too is what kind of containers do I need? If you're using rigid containers, are they approved for hydrogen peroxide? If wrappers, you're going to have maybe different types of wrapping material. You may have to have different kinds, or you'll have to have different kinds of peel pouches, indicators, and your biologicals are all going to be different for that. So that's something that you want to think about. And then will it meet your productivity needs? These come in various sizes. So you want to think about how much are you going to be doing in these? What is the minimum and maximum processing times in the department to see what your capacity might be, and to evaluate how many units are you even going to need. You know, you may think you only need one, but then when you start looking at this, well, now maybe you really could use two. Also consider the load size, flexibility. You know, before you had to run full chambers with the ETO, and these you do not have to run full chambers. You can run partial chambers if you need to. And then you want to look at the weight restrictions. There are weight restrictions on these, just like there are steam sterilizers. And so you want to make sure that the weight of this is going to be compatible with the devices. And then check out your cycle times too. You know, if you can run it on non-lumen, it's going to be faster than if you run it on lumen or flexible. So these are some things that you want to look at. So you're going to have to figure out what the balance is going to be between sterilization needs and your sterilization productivity to get the good fit for this. The other thing that we want to think about is the safety. These sterilization processes are designed to be safe. However, some processes have fewer risks of exposure and are better for the environment. It is important to consider both of these. What kind of risks are you going to take to have any kind of exposure to the sterilant that you might have? You know, you think that it comes out dry and you don't need to put gloves on, but you really should be wearing gloves, as I mentioned earlier, anytime you're dealing with any kind of liquid chemical sterilant, because that there may be a little bit left on there. And some of this, you think, oh, it's hydrogen peroxide. Well, the concentration levels are so high that it really could do some damage to your skin if you get burnt with it. Some other things you want to look at is what are the risk of the byproducts. With most of these, it's pretty safe because you're looking at, with hydrogen peroxide, it's going to break down into water and oxygen, two very safe environments. But the concern is that the concern of the sterilizer, you want to think about these kind of things. And then what kind of alarms are available to notify staff if a critical parameter isn't met during the sterilization process? And when do these alarms go off? Some of these machines, the sterilant is already injected and then they'll test for moisture. And some of them, they test for moisture right away and then your sterilant isn't put in if it detects moisture. So you're actually saving some money on your sterilant by having that happen. And then some other things that we need to think about. Is there any other kind of preventative measures that you might have? Does personnel need to be monitored for exposure or special ventilation required? And then again, we always want to think about patient safety and staff safety, but it's not the only one that we want to consider. You know, we really are starting to think about our environment a little bit more. We want to think about what we're doing and is it going to expel or dump any kind of toxic materials. So like I mentioned earlier, aldehydes, they have to be neutralized prior to disposal. Ethylene oxide, it requires emission scrubbers to prevent ethylene oxide from venting into the atmosphere and reacting with water to form substances like antifreeze. We also want to remember that some of these accessories may require special containers for safe disposal. So these are things that we want to look at. You want to consider manufacturing process for the environment, accessories and consumables. Are they sustainable? Do they employ recycled materials? Are they the materials are constructed of recyclable? So we want to look at patient safety, staff safety, and the environment safety. Also, you have to think about capital budgets. This is our third pillar. Installation costs can vary greatly between various types of low temperature sterilization processes. Some process may require installation of air handling equipment, oxygen tanks, and exhaust management system. It may be necessary to upgrade some of these or modify existing systems that you have in your facility. Other low temperature sterilization processes may require plumbing and drains, and some may require special power requirements. So make sure that you're looking at that when you're considering the cost to your evaluation. Some other things that you may want to consider too is, do you need to have a certain kind of, trays? Like I said, they should be approved for vaporized hydrogen peroxide. Your wrap should be approved for vaporized hydrogen peroxide. And the connectors, if you're doing any kind of device connectors for your endoscopes, those will need to be considered too. But sometimes, the add-ons can be more expensive as you keep adding them on, and can increase the cost of your purchase. The other thing that you want to think about with this too is what is it going to cost you in the long term? What's each cycle going to cost? So you want to look at that, and based on the cycle cost, you want to see how much is your chemical sterilant going to cost for each cycle, and then is there any kind of disposables again that you're going to need: wraps, indicators, PO pouches. And then also you want to think about the cost of if you have to dispose any of the sterilant. Some of it you can just go ahead and it'll automatically dispose of it. The machines will. Others, you may have to run cycles to get to dispose of it. And then again, some other costs that you want to think about that may be necessary is if you have to have oxygen to go to it, any kind of water or electricity too. So you really do have to think about establishing a balance. In a perfect world, all three pillars would balance out perfectly, and a single sterilization choice would be needed. But in the real world, we know that things don't balance, and sometimes you have to think about what's the best fit for your facility. So if you look at these examples, process A, the fit is above average, and it has a low cost. But it rates really low on the safety scale. So you want to think about that one. The middle one, again, high safety, but low fit, low cost. Where the second one, you've got a nice fit, the safety is average, and you've got the cost being average. So again, based on what's going to fit your needs, is going to be the ones that you want to look at for your facility. It's important to note that none of the process provide 100% of the required fit. So it may be necessary to consider why the fit wasn't important. Were devices unable to be processed? Was it the total cycle time was longer? So you really need to look at these to make a good decision on which ones you really want to purchase. And is it going to make a difference to see which one you're gonna use? So once you decide which one you want to use, then we're gonna start looking at the final check of instrumentation and accessories. You want to review your device inventory list, and if you are getting a new one that may not be the brand that you have now, lots of times you can go to the manufacturer of the sterilizer, and they have device matrix that they can look at to see if it's been approved in that device if the IFU doesn't say so. I know that we have a device testing group, and they do send things back to the manufacturer to make sure that they've met the specs, because I had one that wasn't on there, and I called the manufacturer and I asked them if, you know, and they said, you know what, we did have that tested and in your machines, and it didn't perform to the original requirements, so it couldn't be processed in there. So they do check that to make sure that it's going to be performed the way it's supposed to. And again, some of these things I've already talked about. So you want to make sure that you get a system that's open, ensure the automated endo reprocessor can be programmed for the conditions required for sterilization. And it's also, you want to make sure that the processor and any repairs completed on the processor are also compatible with the chemical sterilant. So some other things that we want to think about when we're converting, implementation of the new low temperature sterilizer process may require additional steps for moving from existing to the new high level, or upgrading to high level disinfection. They have a wide variety of chemistries, and some of these are not interchangeable. So it's important to review all your devices to make sure what you can and can't use. Even the models, device models by the same manufacturer, may have different kinds of compatibilities. A zero angled scope may be okay as model B, but model A may not be compatible. So you really want to kind of check with those device manufacturers and make sure that that particular model will work too. The last consideration is for any interaction between residual chemistries and other effects that changing from one chemistry to another may have. For example, when you move from a fixative such as glutaraldehyde or an aldehyde to an oxidative chemistry such as peracetic acid, damage that may be unseen previously is now going to become visible. The fixative nature of the aldehyde chemistry sometimes can close off pinhole openings that damage by fixing materials. The oxidative chemistry may break down the fixative materials, and then you're going to might have this opening into your devices then. So again, make sure that you are having things inspected, and that could be an issue that you might run into. The next thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you're writing your policies and procedures, cleaning and drying of devices. Make sure that you have a good step-by-step process with that. How should they be packaged? What can they be packaged in? And then are you going to be doing any product testing on any of these to make sure that the way you're packaging and the trays that you have are going to be compatible with that? Always check your sterility assurance and your quality monitoring. I would say that if your practice for steam should also match your practice for your hydrogen peroxide. So if you're running a biological on every load with steam, you probably should be running a biological with every load on hydrogen peroxide, because you'll have two different standards of practice if you don't. You want to make sure your records are maintained. And then it's so important with any kind of equipment. I'm sure most of you guys know how expensive some of these pieces of equipment for sterilization are. And, you know, if you're not doing your preventative maintenance and your daily routine maintenance on these, you're not going to possibly get the life expectancy that you want to have out of these. So we need to make sure that they are being serviced by appropriately trained personnel for that, and that you guys are doing the routine maintenance on it also, based on the recommendations in the operator's manual. So installation, again, we talked about the utilities. What do you have done? You have to do qualification testing on these machines, just like you have to do qualification testing on Steam. And then I've already talked about product testing. I am not aware of any kind of personnel monitoring from OSHA, but we need to verify that there isn't going to be anything that maybe your state may require too. We need to look at that. And then implement, again, you know, make sure that they're out there training your staff. I would probably train 1 or 2 people to be super users so that as new staff comes on, you can go ahead and have them train the new staff. Implement or utilize any kind of training materials that the manufacturer may have via their websites or, you know, in-person training, and then continued monitoring on this based on your facility's policies, whether they need to have yearly competencies or whatever kind of continuing education they need. So again, the wrap up, you want to look at what's going to fit your facility. Is it safe, and are you going to get the productivity out of it that you're expecting? So these are the references. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And you guys know Steris University has over 80,000 CEs hours on there. So please help yourself to some CEs. They're all at no charge to you guys. And I think that they've updated 2 or 3 of these. So there should be some new ones on there. That's it.
Thank you so much, Janet. We're very happy that you could join us today.
I'm happy to be here. And as I mentioned before, just get me a list of the people that participated, and I will send that into the corporate office and we'll get certificates back out to you guys.
All right, we will do that. Thank you so much, Janet. You have a good rest of the night.
You too. Bye.
Goodbye. All right. So, hello. All right. So we're going to be continuing with our chapter meeting. We are live in Marshfield at the public library. All right. So just give us a second while we get this all switched around. All right. All right. There's that. Okay. So we should be able to hear it.
Okay.
Yep.
I make a motion for, I asked someone to make a motion to call this meeting to order. I motion. And Leslie seconds it.
Yes.
All right. Do we have any announcements? All right, then I guess we'll jump right to the reports. What do we got from our secretary? It's attached to your agenda. You want me to read that? Yeah, we just need to get everybody to check their questions. Not. Motion.
I motion to accept it.
All right.
And Jan seconds it. All right.
All right. Do we have anything from the treasurer? Treasury report. The savings account started at $23,996.32. We had interest in June and July, and the balance on the savings account is $23,998.32. The checking account started at $16,414.66. We took in chapter dues of $85. There was a check written for the Zoom Pro and the webinar in June. We have an outstanding check for $3.92. There was no activity in the month of July, so the balance on the checking account is $16,441.65. Both accounts together are $40,439.97. It was Lori
Copper?
Excuse me.
Let's see. She'd probably have to call in. I don't have it. I don't know if she has it set up to be able to chat back.
Lori, are you there?
One thing for the AD committee, David Girosi had something posted on that Facebook. They do have some updates for STC that'll be coming out. It's like 4 different areas: environmental, cleaning, and housekeeping, the use of fans, food, drinks, and sterile processing. That's all one. He didn't go into detail of what they were, but those are kind of the categories. Inspection of insulated instruments, routine care and daily cleaning of sterilizers, and the consistency and documenting of BI testing number of the sterilizer records. And so they're kind of, I think, focusing a little bit more on that. Joint Commission has dug into that when they come.
Yeah, everything needs to be documented big time.
So just so people kind of know that that is in the making. Really say when that's coming out. It's an amendment that they're going to get approved. But be looking for that because there will be some updates on that.
Okay. We want to go through the bylaws. We'll be covering that at the retreat. IT marketing.
Okay, can we just go back to that one a minute?
Sure.
I think we probably need to check on our retreat.
See if we have it.
To make sure that we're still able to have that function at the hotel.
Okay, I will call the hotel and confirm our need for the usage of the hotel. Make sure we're on for that.
Make sure we still be there, yeah.
And I guess then we'll have to see who else is gonna go.
Yeah, I think we should talk that, like, who is going to attend, because we should probably be looking at our rooms.
Right.
Because we have, I think that's our biggest piece, is to know that we have enough places for everybody that's going to show up to have get a hold of what she called me.
All right. So IT marketing. So our Facebook, we just hit 300 likes this week. We're at 310 followers. I've done a post every day for this month. I generally sit down and I'll knock them out, and I build them all from scratch in Paint, which I don't know if you've ever used Paint, but that's kind of like where you do the little thing and you draw some lines, but I figured out how to actually build stuff in it. So I'm building each and every one of those of the posts that you guys see with the questions and answers and all that. I sit and I build all that from scratch then. So I would be happy if anybody has like additions, like CHL book or anything like that that I can use to pull some of my ideas from, just so I have resources. I don't have a lot of that readily available. Just some
I
of it.
am.
So if anybody has something that.
I have a leadership,
Yeah.
you want in a leadership book?
Yeah, that would be great too.
I think I have one that you can have.
Okay, that would be great.
I'll bring it at our next meeting, or
Okay,
I can bring it to my office if you're anywhere near the hospital.
sure. Yep, that would be great, because then that way I have it to,
Because I think I have the whole thing, the study guide and stuff, and I never proceeded with it for the leadership one, so if you want it.
okay, that would be great. Yeah, just so that way I have a resource to try to continue to post stuff. I'm trying to running dry. There's a lot of stuff.
I like those.
Yeah,
I think it's good for new people in our field, but I think it's a reaffirmment for the people that have been around a while to know that, oh yeah, I'm on track with that.
yeah,
That's what it is.
yeah. Some of that stuff you just kind of forget about, and it just kind of brings that back to you and say, hey, that's something to look into, and it creates a conversation among people as well. So.
I saw on a Facebook post the other day that somebody is going to get certified soon,
Yeah,
and they mentioned that it's helping them learn what they need to learn and stuff.
yeah, so, yeah. It's definitely helping us achieve our mission of to educate people. So I'll keep doing that. So far, we've had our posts have reached 408 people, which is a 23% increase. Out of that 408, we have 242 roughly, which is about a 40% average who actually engage by clicking on it or talking in all the posts that we're posting. And that's generated 4 new post page likes. So other people are kind of talking about us now. So
Something that might be, something to share is maybe link Siri or Adams, Susan Adams, link them in,
okay,
just so that they see what we're doing, because that brings us up to a higher vision of, and
I know Damon's on there, because I've seen him on there.
Yeah.
So just something to, links, because Siri and Susan are both in the upper aspects of, for the leadership. So that might be just something that we can do.
Yeah.
Just say, have you seen, or something.
Okay. Yeah. Because maybe you can help me figure out how to connect with them.
Oh, I have their email addresses.
Okay, I'll do that.
Siri is the one that you send
Siri Sorensen.
she's the one that you send your process.
Yeah. Oh, the process.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can email her. And that way we can help our other fellow chapters that might be struggling.
Because that might be something that somebody.
And they may see something that you're doing that maybe
Yeah.
somebody else might be able to do, especially with COVID and not being able to connect. We can do a small group, but at least reach a big group. So
Yeah, most definitely. And that kind of brings us to community engagement, which we'll talk about later. And then with our Instagram, I have 105 posts so far. We've drawn up 20 followers, so we're at 60 right now. I'm generally taking the posts that I'm putting on Facebook and putting them on Instagram, so that we have a worldwide audience of people that are connecting with us and talking to us on there. And then LinkedIn, we're at 87 followers. I haven't figured out how to keep up with LinkedIn. Facebook and Instagram, I can sit down and I can pre-register all the posts so they automatically generate at certain times. So I'm not like sitting there at 6 o'clock every night, like pushing a button. So yeah, I don't have it set up. I'm not sitting there waiting to push the button. Facebook has it set up so you can build all of that and schedule them. And then they'll automatically just roll out at certain times when you have them scheduled. So, but LinkedIn doesn't have that option currently. So I've been struggling with how I'm gonna try to build our LinkedIn a little more to be a little more active on it. So that's what I've got for that.
Lauren, did you have anything else for Amy?
No, I did not.
Okay.
We moved on to legislative, and nothing new from Lori, I assume.
I haven't heard from her. But Jane and I were talking on our way up here. We're wondering where we are with like proclamation. I believe that was supposed to come out in July.
Yeah, because I was gonna say last year it got sent to Jane, I think.
Yep.
And so I don't know, last year I reached out too late, but you can go to a webpage. I'll have to look and see, but you can sign up for a proclamation, but you have to do it like 2 months ahead. So right now is the time that we need to do it.
I'm wondering if we should reach out to Lori Farrar and see if she's heard from her, because she would be the one that would probably get that.
I haven't heard from Joe's now.
So, yeah, so now would be the time we need to do it.
Past 2 months, and I haven't heard back.
Now, she was on vacation. She's due back into the office this past Monday. She was supposed to go back in, but I haven't heard from her either. Since I sent her.
Okay, membership. I have to work on the welcoming letter. Any advice? Just change the dates and all the stuff.
I sent it to Lori, what we had been sending out, so that we could kind of look at like, what do we want to do? Because we want to make it more generic than what it is, because our original letter was welcoming them or congratulating them on their certification for their CRCST. But when we get that list from Isham, it doesn't tell us if they're certified, if it's CRCST, if it's CER, if it's a CHL, or if they just joined Isham as a member. So to send them a letter saying, welcome, and we're glad to see you get certified when they just joined as a member, we're not on the same page. So we can make it more generic, like, welcome to the Isham family, and then go into, if you're looking for CEs, this is what our chapter can do for you, and then it can go to everybody. Because if they're looking for CEs, whether it's for their CHL or their CRCST, you still got to have those to turn them in yearly.
And we should also, in that welcoming letter, just say opportunities to reach out to through all the things that you've been setting up.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest draws was that, you have the potential to reach all of your industry leaders. And that's something that our chapter has definitely helped me do. So that's something, that I'm expand on what potential there is.
You could maybe take some of the stuff from this, Lori, from that flyer that wasn't put together, because I think there's a lot of things in there, because it talks about our Facebook, our LinkedIn, and our Instagram. Our webpage, our email, it's all on there. You can kind of add. Some of that is in that letter, but not the Facebook and all of that stuff that we've now started to do. And then I think we should talk about this flyer.
Awesome job.
Trying to get this sent out to the different departments that need to see this, so if we could recruit members. I went through and put together a list of hospitals in Wisconsin. We didn't do that last year to update our mailings. It's quite interesting because we've had a lot of change within Wisconsin with people buying people, name changes that happen. So I have to wonder how much of that maybe didn't get delivered when she sent out our flyers for our workshop last year. There were 78 name changes. Some were address changes, 22 new facilities, and 18 that didn't exist. So Diane had actually run a list that she had given me in June, and Marshfield wasn't on there. No Marshfields were on there. What the heck is that all about? So then I Googled it and got onto the Department of Health, Wisconsin Department of Health, because I'm like, well, they should have all the hospitals. We're in a virus, they're probably checking on everybody. And so then I compared those two listings, and that's what I found. So I have that built in a spreadsheet so that we could do like run labels, make these run labels, fold them, get them sent out.
Awesome.
Lori last year went through and did the dental clinics and the schools. And I don't know if we need to look at that and maybe update those dental clinics, maybe have changed some, I don't know, with everything that's gone on in Wisconsin. But Diane had just pulled up that one, I mean, just recently. And so not everybody was on there, which is kind of what alerted me to, hey, what's going on here? And so Ascension has brought up a few things, Marshfield has brought up, Mayo's brought up, I mean, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, they're all competing
Yeah,
very strongly.
who's buying up? And they're kind of those little places that they're buying up.
It's not, it's a business.
Yeah.
It's a business.
So we may have to look at the dental clinic piece of that and make sure that we've got those, especially when we do our mailings, that we've got everything that we need to have.
Okay. Moving on to National Chapter Task Force. Peggy?
I haven't heard anything for that yet. That usually they'll send out an email for what's going on. I think COVID kind of put everything in a
Stall.
stall.
I
Yeah.
think we are.
So, I mean, I think just because there's no answers, so with school going back, it's the first step for a lot of things. And I think they're just testing the waters that way. And then once that happens, then they can start seeing where things are going to go. But as of right now, I haven't heard
I think
anything.
there's a lot of things that are on kind of a standstill because of that.
And a lot of the things, honestly, a lot of the things that they were talking about, at the last meeting or whatever else before we split up to groups, is everything that we're doing right now. Reaching out, doing doing Zoom meetings and how to reach out to our people. I mean, you're doing it through all these different digital ways, which is our newer, younger generation, that's how we're going to reach them. So with that, I think we're doing basically everything that we're meeting the challenges that the whole world, our whole Isham chapter has been having issues with. So they may be reaching out to us or you to see how you did it, what you did, and how you can help out others to do the same thing. So, but that's pretty much everything that way.
Okay, moving on to nomination. Workshop.
Workshop. We are having a meeting following this meeting to kind of talk about it. Our workshop for 2021 is March 26th and 7th. We currently have 6 speakers lined up. We're still needing to have 4 or 5, depending on how many CEs we're going to do. It is at Sacred Heart Hospital in Eau Claire. That's what we know for sure.
Tentatively, if they allow it.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping that we can move forward with this whole virus by that point.
Or do we put the school as a backup again?
I don't know, we're 6 months out.
Yeah, but the schools are having the same issues
Yeah,
now. It wasn't just that, it was just the hospitals and the clinics.
they are.
Just
Yeah, because that's where it was
started.
getting started.
Now it's everything.
And they were kind of concerned about their patients and their workers and.
Visitors bringing
Yeah.
something
And
in.
then still there's a lot of
later
people,
when they shut everything down.
there's still a lot of people on hold that they're not supposed to go to meetings at all. So there's a lot of question. I mean, we gotta still continue, but there's still a lot of question.
And of course, we have the IT aspect where we have to, we can definitely utilize that for our chapter meeting, or for our workshop next year if we have to. So there's definitely, it'll happen.
There's places that avenues we can go down if
Yes.
we need to. Hopefully it's not the last minute like it was last year. Because we were scrambling.
Yeah, but if it would have been one more day, we would have had to cancel it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Literally one more day, we would have been canceled.
Okay, any newsletter updated information?
I don't really have anything new on for the
When
newsletter.
will that be coming out? October?
Yeah, I believe October.
Got a little time.
Yeah, I was really fast last time. And now this time I haven't. I haven't really thought about it too much, so.
Gee, Burke is a little bit busy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, old news or old business, the CE issuing quiz, how is that going? Anybody?
I had one gal that asked for that,
Yep.
What was it?
the
So,
CEs from tonight.
Oh,
How did they get their CEs?
Yeah, so, with Janet, they need to contact us and, via email or whatever,
Mhm.
and let us know that they would like their CE, and then we'll send out some kind of quiz or something just to kind of, do their participation. And then we'll send out their stuff. Janet, like tonight, she said that, just let her know, and then she'll send out her certificate, and then of course for our meeting and our hot topic. So yeah, that way we're still able to give out our CEs for our members.
Right.
Okay, any new business? New business? New, old, other? Upcoming meetings. Are we going to have a meeting in October?
Well, I think we need to. So Hayward was going to do the October meeting, and the gal who originally set it up switched jobs, so she's not in the department anymore. And so when I contacted the other folks that we know from Hayward, they're kind of like, well, we're kind of up in the air. And with the virus, they were concerned about that as well. Were they even going to be able to have it? So they are interested in doing a meeting, but down the road. I did contact Whitehall to see if they were interested in doing a meeting. And again, it's the virus, and they're not sure if they're going to be able to have it, but they are also interested in doing another meeting. So I think 2021, we haven't got anything set up for sure for 2021, but I think there's a couple people that want to. So if I can get them pinned down as to like what month would you like to do it, so we can at least get it on our agenda. And then we kind of know what's still open for other people to be able to pick a month if they want to do a meeting.
October is still kind of open yet?
Yeah, Lori and I had talked about it, and we're like, well, maybe we could do a meeting at Coloma when we're together for our retreat. Right, because we could Zoom it from there.
Yeah.
We just need to figure out what day would you do that. So when you call to find out if we can, if we're still on for Coloma, can you ask if there's anything going on Thursday night that we could have the living room? Otherwise, we'd have to do it Friday night, or we'd have to do it.
Yeah, but in one of the big bedrooms.
Yeah, or that. I thought about that too, because that one bedroom's got that couch in it. I mean, we could make that work in there.
Yeah.
So
You know.
Thursday night, if they have any,
If they have any
Special.
activity going on in the living room.
But do they have, well, you really don't, the screen is more for us. You have
She would have it off the computer, right?
you
Yeah.
have it on the
Yeah.
computer, we can
I
do
have a
that.
projector.
Yeah, we do have a projector. They do have a TV, but I don't know how we connect that. You know, what you have to do to connect.
Yeah, I can do that. I can get it.
Because they got that big TV.
Yeah, just
In
in
the
case.
living room, right?
Yeah.
Because, I think that would probably be a good answer. We can hit two birds with one stone.
Mhm.
so Thursday night, any activity in the living room.
Yeah, and if they do have something going on, Friday night should be ours.
Okay.
But just to make sure that they don't have something going on Friday night. Because that one year they had the Halloween party. and-
Yeah, and this is even earlier, so.
Yeah.
that
Well,
didn't
cool.
matter.
So we do the Coloma meeting at 5?
Well, that's what we need to figure out. If we're doing it Thursday, what time are we gonna do the meeting? Because we're gonna have to send that out to our members.
Well, that's just it. A lot of people are first coming Thursday night.
Yeah.
So that's why I was wondering if we did maybe at 7:00, we could do that.
7 o'clock meeting?
And then,
we should also call and see if we can go to that bar for.
well,
our
that's the
meal.
other thing I was talking about. Are we gonna be able to go out, or are we needing to plan meals? Like, we could do crock pot stuff.
Not at all.
So who's all gonna have to go to the Coloma then?
All of our board members need to go
Right,
because
but
they're
Is
part
there
of it.
anybody else? That's all I was asking.
Jane is not a board member, Lori Farrar is not a board member. Yeah, Leslie's on the board now. I think it's just Lori Farrar and Jane.
So it'd be like
1, 2, 3,
6 plus
4, 5,
2.
6, 7, 8.
Yep. So there'd be 8 of us for sure. We had kind of
Is
talked,
Lori Copper gonna be able to come?
Lori, are you gonna be able to come to Coloma?
Did you lose her again?
Hello? Okay, all right. The other thing that we had kind of talked about at one time was to bring people who were interested in getting on board to the retreat so that they could kind of get to know people. They don't necessarily have jobs, so I was thinking like people, somebody like Tiffany who had said that she might be interested, because we're definitely gonna, if it's only 8 people, we're definitely gonna have enough room to bring
Fires people up, because you have a good time just getting to know people.
Lori Farrar, Jane, and then us 4.
Well, that's kind of how Nancy and I started when we went to that first retreat.
So our first retreat, when we went to a meeting, Lori Farrar was like, anybody that wants to come, just come on, and this is where it's at. She sent, the information, so we knew how to get to where we needed to be and all of that. So then we had just gone to like a meeting. We had joined in 2010, and we went to our first retreat in November of 10. And I want to say we joined like in the spring.
Yeah.
And so we're like, well, maybe we should get involved with that, get to know a few more people, see what we can do to help to promote. And so
Tiffany is a firecracker. I think she would enjoy.
Yeah, and when we showed up, they were just like, oh my God, come on in, they were just like, okay.
See,
We got a
because
couple more
if we
people.
can give it enough heads up, then they can take some PTO
Yeah.
and maybe get some time off.
So who has contact with her at all? Anybody? Yeah, why don't you just,
Facebook.
why don't you just like put it out there and see if she'd be interested in that? Sure. Kind of explain a little bit, like you're gonna have your own room,
Everything's paid for except for,
a meal, whatever. Well, and that we don't even know because of everybody,
depending, pretty much it's all taken care of, so it's,
like she doesn't have to pay for
and
hotel.
her input matters.
How many rooms do we have?
We have 9 rooms, but 3 of the rooms have 2 beds in them. So we actually have enough for 12 people to sleep.
So just start being headhunters and.
Yeah, if you think of somebody that might be, who's a member who might have showed some interest. It's kind
Don't
of.
we need a nominating committee member?
Okay.
Don't we need because we were looking for a nomination.
That Jane picked that up last meeting.
But Diane, well, but
She was membership and Lori kind of like sucked that one in. Well, maybe not, just kind of took it over because she had to get rid of the stuff, but.
So I'll ask the hotel if there's a restriction on how many people too.
Yeah, that would be good,
Yeah.
because there might be. Mhm. I mean, I think we can do okay in that living room by spreading people out so that we have enough distance. Some people could sit at the table, other people could sit in the chairs, So when we do our meeting, that we've got enough space for us.
Hey.
and that's the October 15th and 16th, right?
We go up on the 15th. Mhm. We're there to work on the 16th and have a day on the 17th. But I think we should probably come up with like what day we're going to do that meeting once she finds out if the room is open. Because we don't have to do it at 5 o'clock.
Right.
Because our meeting is basically going to be an hour, Hopefully everybody could stay awake from 7 to 8 if we have it at 7. You know what I mean? Well,
Well, we don't want to booze drinking.
depends on what time you go to work in the morning, All right, so we'll wait to hear back from the hotel. That'll be our first thing, and then we can kind of go from there to decide when we're going to do it.
I'll call them 6 possible.
Because I'm thinking if we do it Friday night, we're all gonna be there. I mean, we will all be there for a day, so.
Yeah.
I mean, we could do a 5 o'clock.
Are you gonna call the cabin, the bar, to see if they're open for us? I know.
I gotta get out of the sun.
That's what I was wheeling around
I'm blinded.
before.
I'm gonna call the hotel and the bar and make sure that they're both available.
So
The
if
hotel
we
probably will
can't
know.
go
what-
to, yeah, you could ask them, if we can't go, can we do carryouts from the cabin?
That's a good question.
Is that what's called the cabin?
Yeah.
The cabin. Because if they're open for carryouts, we can always
Go
go
and
get the
and bring them
food.
back.
Yeah,
If they're not gonna have, because their dining room isn't very big.
no.
Right.
But if
That'd be
they have
awesome.
carry, I mean, so many bars are doing, or so many eating places are doing carryouts, that might be,
That's the only way they can stay alive.
right,
One per day.
so,
Okay.
and yeah, they might know at the hotel if the cabin is.
So I might reach out to those guys and see if they can come up with a month that they wanna hook up to our dates and then kind of go from
Sounds
there.
good.
Because then we'll at least be able to, we don't necessarily need to know the day, we just need to know the month that they want to do it. And then they still have time to get that out of the rest of it.
So are we gonna contact you if we find like a Tiffany or somebody else that would?
Yeah, we
take us-
just need to know that because we've got
Sign
enough
up.
rooms. We just need to know, somebody needs to know that she's coming.
Right, but I mean, you need to keep track of that too, or somebody does,
Right.
because we can only book to 12.
Correct.
If we just send it out in the email, you know.
I have a question on that.
Yeah.
Then, so then if we're gonna do the retreat again in 21, could we like kind of do the meeting for October then again, if it works out this year?
So less driving, less yeah, that works
Yeah,
out.
see, yeah,
Kind of like our chapter meeting in March, or the workshop,
Right.
it ties to that.
so that's 2 definites.
So the thing that we need to do is we need to get a speaker for October. And that for sure is probably gonna be
Zoom.
what we did today.
I wonder if Damon.
He would have something that he would do on Zoom. I know he had a little bit of trouble when he was supposed to speak because he
I
had
think it was
done
just
it.
like short notice, but probably by now I'm sure he's came up with something.
Yeah,
So,
Well, and then even at that, you know, there's been enough opportunity to
Yeah.
connect with Zoom, so.
Yeah.
And if we give them a heads up.
so you can reach out to him. Do you have his email address?
I do.
Okay. I mean, at least we could get something going for us.
Yeah.
Unless he really wants to come up.
He could come, we have a room for him.
Yes.
Gentlemen, the room is paper, he's just gotta get his
We
word
can have
in
his
here.
own room. Bring it away.
Yeah. Yeah.
We put him up, absolutely.
You take him to the bar.
It's a weekend retreat.
Yeah,
That's all it's got to work. That's it.
bring the bone,
Right.
bring his way.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right, moving on. After our Oklahoma retreat, then we'll be meeting December 11th at Gunderson Elk, lacrosse.
you're on for that, right, Lori?
Yep,
Do you have a speaker?
no.
Okay,
All right. Well, we'll be waiting to hear about that. February is a no location yet, or date, obviously.
Yeah.
March, we're looking at Sacred Heart in Eau Claire. Spring workshop is at Sacred Heart in Eau Claire. National Conference in Ohio this year, or I mean next year, 2021. So then we have June, August, October, December to be determined yet, location and date. So anybody that wants to plan ahead, let us know. Now we'll go to community involvement with Leslie and Lori Copper.
Well, most of the walks are virtual. So I mean, it's easy to sign up for a walk, and you can just put in our organization's name, and then go walk around the block or the park for an hour or whatever, get your miles in, and then, so that would be our community involvement. Also, we're kind of doing the community involvement digitally in a lot of ways now, just with going on Facebook to try to reach out to our community. More like our sterilization or communities. We're just kind of thinking outside the block. I haven't heard anything about if Marshfield's hosting a dental this year. I kind of doubt it. There's so much.
But you'll have a little insight on that, won't you, being in dental now? I mean, to know if there's something in the area, like not this necessarily this year, but in the future?
Yeah, I would definitely hear about it now. Ricky and dental.
Right.
But I haven't heard anything yet. Right now, there's so much restrictions just because you're working in patients' mouth and
Well, how's that all going? I got a dentist appointment next Tuesday.
it varies.
It's actually kind of interesting. I went to a dentist, sorry, off topic, but I went to a dentist appointment and they're garbed up in their little white coat. They have the shield, they have the N95 or whatever mask that they have. They have their goggles and everything, everything is wiped down. I had to have the x-rays, films done. So they put you on a lead apron on and then they wipe everything down after you're done. And they're very, and then they only have you wait to come in. You don't sit in the waiting area. You wait, you call them or text them when you get to the parking lot. And as soon as you get there, you call them and then they'll tell you, okay, come to the front door and we'll let you in. So there's no waiting in the waiting areas.
You haven't gotten any of that instruction yet from mine.
We're calling a week ahead, so we have to call them a week before their appointment and go through the list. You have this, you have this, you have this. I've been to any high COVID areas. And then up to their appointment, they need to call us if anything's changed, and then we'll reschedule them. But we're booking out once. It's just hard to get anyone in.
Don't cancel it because you won't get.
No, I wasn't planning on canceling it, and I'm thinking, okay, so I'll wear my mask to get in there, and they obviously have a procedure that they're going to do once I get there.
But my dentist has a procedure where you have to wear a mask. You have to hand sanitize when you're doing the first door. You have to use mouthwash.
Yep.
Then you wait there if there's someone ahead of you.
Oh.
Yeah, and then we're doing like pulse ox. So rather than the temperature, because if their thought process is if they're having trouble breathing, like that's clear. And there's clearly something wrong, whereas not everybody has a fever that is asymptomatic.
The whole thing that we get going on.
So yeah, any patient that is under 90% oxygen level, we are refusing.
Really?
Yeah.
I never get in. I never get in.
Yeah, I mean, unless you
So
can,
low now.
yeah, they're just refusing them. Otherwise, I mean,
Well,
unless
and it's good to be on the safe side. I mean, you're protecting everybody.
Yeah. Well, and if they're having that much trouble breathing, like you don't want to be trying to
Absolutely. Be working in the mouth.
working in their mouth for a long period of time. So
Yeah, I get it.
Okay, I guess we'll do the hot topic next. By moi. I kind of went through some articles in our Process magazine, and I read an article by Rose Stevie and made some notes on her article. And then I also read the hot topic, lead into the department and transformation by Nicholas. So we have changed a lot, but still a long way to go in CS. In the olden days, we cleaned and sterilized instruments the way we were taught or how we thought was the best way. Back then, we would ask our coworkers, leads, or managers, mainly because that's how we always did things. We live in a more complicated, high-tech time, with sophisticated instruments and complex designs have made enormous challenges and barriers of the reprocessing. Now we have many sources at our fingertips to ensure the proper way of doing everything the right way. Yet on social media sites, technicians are asking basic questions that they should be finding the answers to themselves by looking for published resources like Issues Manual or AMI, AORN, CDC, FDA, and OSHA. All of these have info for best practices and manufactured instructions on IFUs. Positive change doesn't happen overnight. Today, we have to be certain we are doing everything the right and safest way possible. Leading into departmental transformation. By using lean concepts may seem simple, but true lean transformation can take many years to accomplish. Start by a succession of minor changes as opposed to a massive altercation. Know that nobody is there to do a bad job. Everybody comes to work to do a good job. Continually engage all members of the department for success, since everyone will play a role and need to be heard. People will accept changes and adapt over time, especially when engaged in the decisions. The importance in the philosophy of lean concept or Six Sigma or other methodologies focuses on value for the patients. By making steady progress through all the specialties, you will eventually be able to improve all of your sterile stock without being a massive project. Yeah.
All right.
Any questions, any comments?
It is true though. I mean, so many people were taught one way. I mean, we kind of talked about that now, right? With your situation, well, it's always been like that. But just because it's always been like that doesn't mean that it's right.
Well, just like what she said in our meeting today, in her presentation, how we used to soak, things. And then I remember when I started out as a surgical tech, literally soaking stuff or, hollering down at CS back then, many moons ago, but to say, just open up the aerator, we'll take it, we'll rinse it. How many times, I think about it now, how many times do we subject our CS people to the cancer? So, or to acquiring the cancer.
But if you didn't know, I mean, you can't do what you don't know.
Right.
And at that point, like when I first went into CS, the OR they were the god. And if they wanted it, you gave it to them. And I'm like, why are we doing this? And you're jeopardizing the people that are working with it, and then it goes to the patient. So that
How
changed.
times have changed.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a gal that came back to our department, to our hospital. She left, went to 2 other hospitals and came back. So she's learned 2 other ways. Can't remember our way.
Sure.
And it's like, well, we didn't do that before. And I tried telling her, we have changed a lot of stuff in just the 3 years that she's gone.
Yeah.
Things are changing.
It's a constant.
Daily,
For sure.
almost
Yeah.
hourly sometimes.
Yeah.
Michelle had a good question. Lori Copper, do you have anything to add to community?
No, the stepping out of pink is virtual now. Jane had mentioned that in the last meeting.
Yeah.
And then, I believe they're still gonna do the rotary lights.
Okay.
I think that usually starts, Thanksgiving. So I'm sure other communities possibly, check your papers
Do
and
you know anything about Mercer?
Do we want to do any bell ringing? Start signing up for some bell ringing to let people know who we are.
I don't know if they're gonna allow
That's
it.
Yeah.
what I was wondering too.
It's hard to say.
There's so much stuff that you
I
can't
bet you
do.
they will. The bell ringing, I bet
Oh, how
you.
will
And
they-
you can still distance yourself.
Yeah, you can
How will
stand
they-
outside.
Some places are doing credit card inside the store, or it goes with the grocery bill inside.
Oh, yeah.
And the bell ringer still is outside, but I don't know about the money part.
Yeah.
Festivals, I mean, they do both.
So I think it's just something, last year, I thought about it too late and my schedule got filled up too much, but I'd be willing to do, some bell ringing with somebody, ring
Yeah.
somebody's bell.
I would do that. That would be fine.
I think it would be fun to do, just a group of us.
Yep.
Well, I think that's the fun part about it. It's not something that you generally do by yourself. There's a couple of you.
Yeah.
So kind of a pair.
Dana and
Let's-
Jackie would
let's plan
probably
for 1 or
do
2
that
days
too.
that we
Make it
can
a
do.
little-
Yeah.
There was a guy that did it singly on his own last year in Wausau, and he actually sang.
Oh,
Yeah.
No.
No.
they'll pay me to- Maybe I'll say they'll pay me to stop.
I can
Somebody had
mime.
a dog, and they collected a lot of money too because they had a dog with them. Oh, wow. Of course, people stopped and then they donated. So it's people being creative. Yeah.
Oh, we can always discuss it more at Paloma.
Sure,
Some more ideas.
absolutely.
All right, I'll take a call for adjournment. Unless there's anything else.
I have one more thing that I want to talk about. And to write it down, I want to remember. There was a thing on the Facebook page again about colored tip protectors. Has anybody heard anything about that?
Oh, I did hear you can't use the clear ones.
Yeah, AORN has now changed that clear tip protectors cannot be used on your instruments. Why? They need colored
Otherwise, you can miss them.
because of visibility.
Visibility issue.
That's a
somebody is-
recommendation.
Yeah, it's a
right now.
recommendation.
Nobody's gonna throw.
It's in the
clear ones away.
sterilization guide under packaging publication from October of 2019. And it's AORN. I just thought that was interesting when I
Yeah.
saw it.
Yeah,
I feel like
I
we
saw
should
it
get that out there so other people know about it. Some of the people had gotten an email from Key Surgical
Okay, yeah.
that they are now changing all of theirs to, they had colored before, but they're getting rid of the clear ones. So I think you just have to change your ordering information in order to have the right ones.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
We don't have clear ones.
We
we've
do.
got that smoky one,
Smoky
and
one.
I don't know. if
The one for the Gulpy?
Huh?
The one for the Gulpy that has a hole in the middle?
No,
We've got.
no, it's our big fat ones that go. They're
Oh, we
big.
do too. The really big ones
Yeah.
for the Niskamums
Yeah,
are clear.
yeah, so you
Well,
need
we
to take
get
that
most-
back and tell them, you just need to get the colored one.
Yeah.
Well, because we have specific departments that they want the clear ones so that they can see what the tip is.
Yep,
Yes.
Yeah.
and they're gonna have to learn their instruments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have got a route to put on, we'll be
Well, and it
happy.
makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah, no, it does.
Something that's gonna jeopardize the patient's safety. I just thought it was interesting.
What was the hot topic?
Oh, yeah, what are we certifying the hot topic as?
We have changed a lot, but still a long way to go.
Change what? One way. Perfect.
All right, Jane made the motion.
I second it. No,
All
Michelle.
right.
Alrighty.
Who's good?
Moving on, getting